This is the longest true horrifying story episode. This episode is worth the time. The story took place in Nador, Morocco in the year 2015. The story was submitted by Ilyas. Back in 2015, Ilyas was an 18-year-old Moroccan Muslim that lived in Norway. One night, Ilyas was back in Morocco visiting family, and he stayed up late watching a movie at home till 3 in the morning. The living room was very warm, so he got up to open the window for fresh air. As he was at the window, being at the 4th floor in that building, he looks down, and the street was dark and empty, but there was one man wearing black from head to toe with a hood covering his face. He wasn't sure why that man was outside at that time. He looked away, but then peeked one last time out of curiosity. When he looked at him again, the man had his hands on a building's wall. He was strangely just feeling the wall, and out of nowhere, the man vanishes through that wall. He rubbed his eyes in disbelief after what he just witnessed. Ilyas swears that there was no door in that spot. It was just physically impossible. He forgets about this after a while and then flies back to Norway. 6 months later, in Norway, Ilyas experiences his first ever sleep paralysis, which in Islam is known as Jathum. He vividly remembers having a conversation with a dark figure, and his mom also witnessed him speak in his sleep. He woke up after the paralysis with swollen feet and rashes all over his body. They rushed to the ER, and none of the doctors could diagnose what caused his body to react that way. He was finally discharged after treatment, but after that day, Ilyas was never the same person. He always acted differently. He was antisocial. He was distant from people. And his mom always told him that he needed ruqya. A few months later, they fly back to Morocco for the next holiday season. He was always against his mother's ruqya idea. However, he decided to fight his thoughts and do it. He had a cousin that was also suffering, and she visited a raqi in Morocco quite regularly. So they went together with both of their moms. When they reached, they sat down and waited for their session. Ilyas could hear the raqi in the other room, and he felt extremely uneasy and started to sweat. The Quran recitation, the ruqya, the sounds, made him not even want to look at that direction. He was angry. He went outside for a moment to gain back his senses until their turn finally reached. The raqi called them in and started. Ilyas's cousin immediately started reacting horribly when the Quran started. She was screaming so loud. Ilyas started losing senses throughout his entire body. He was sweating, he was unable to move, and he was shouting from fear. He does pray, and he does read Quran, but he was so confused as to why he was screaming. He felt like he was being tortured. The slightest pinch from the raqi felt like it was a knife stab. It was very powerful, and this is where he felt a jinn's presence inside of him. The following night was the most horrific night for Ilyas. For a whole week, the man was not able to sleep alone, and he would get mentally abused by these demons haunting him. Weeks go by. Ilyas started getting demonic thoughts of harming his own family. He hated everyone. When he would look at his own sister, her face would seem distorted to him. He knows these beings are playing with his head. His whole life turned upside down. He would regularly think of harming his own family, but luckily, he never did. A few months later, Ilyas was back in Norway, and life was back to normal. He was relieved that he was in a good state of mind and that the horror was over. At the time, he worked at a local grocery store. After a Christmas celebration at work, which he did not participate in, it was late at night. He was walking one of his colleagues back home from work. She was a young woman and she was scared to walk alone. After they reached outside her place, she asked him, "Where's that other girl that was with us?" "What girl?" Ilyas asked. "There was no one there. It was just you and I." She swore that there was another woman with black hair, pale skin, standing next to him the whole time, staring at Ilyas's colleague with anger. Even though this entity gave Ilyas a break, this jinn was still around, haunting everyone that has intentions towards Ilyas. This is a true horrifying story, part 80. This story took place in Tamil Nadu, Tanjavur in South India. Nisha, a 12-year-old girl back in 1998. Nisha, her sister, and her parents are based in London. However, they visit India on a yearly basis to visit their family. They have a big house, the biggest house in this whole village. In 1998, they took a trip from London to India for a family visit, and they stayed in their big house. Just a piece of info. In India, women commonly wear a form of jewelry that is an anklet on their feet, and it makes a jingly noise. One day, while the family was in India, the father had to fly back to London for very urgent work. So the mother and her two daughters decided to stay longer. Since it was only the three of them, they all slept together in the living room downstairs. The night the father left, at 11 p.m., Nisha fell asleep. The mother and Nisha's sister were awake watching TV. They heard these anklet noises, the anklet I told you about. But none of the girls were wearing any anklets on their feet. The sound came from the staircase. It sounded loud and clear, as if a woman was slowly walking down the staircase, coming closer and closer. The mother and her daughters froze in fear, and not one word was uttered. Nisha's mom got up and went closer to the anklet noises to see who it was. She saw a strange outline of a woman, but it wasn't human. She came back to the girls, and from the immense fear and shock, she couldn't tell them what she saw. Since that day, Nisha's mom was never the same, and she still cannot describe what that thing was exactly. 15 years later, Nisha eventually gets married and has her own child. In 2013, from London, Nisha flew to India, and she went to that same house. Every time she steps foot in that house, only at night, the jinn with the anklet decides to haunt her. Sometimes the noises are fast, as if someone is dancing, and sometimes they are slow. However, this noise is still there, and it haunts them every single night. Eventually, the father built a wall in front of the staircase to make his family finally sleep in peace. But the only downside of this wall was you will never be able to see the beautiful staircase they had. But ever since 1998, no one has ever been upstairs. When a property is abandoned for this long, other beings will take your property. And just like Nisha's house, there is a presence of a jinn that likes anklets, that does not want to be disturbed.